the weakest species. The Galactic Council Chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of gleaming crystal and metal, its soaring walls decorated with the proud banners of 1,000 civilized worlds. Ambassador Krextar of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing dramatically as holographic displays showed detailed military assessments. The assembled delegates from hundreds of species watched with varying degrees of interest and amusement. "Honored representatives," Krextar's voice boomed through the translation matrix, reaching every corner of the vast chamber. "Today, we discuss the latest petition for full membership from the species calling themselves humans." The way he pronounced the word made it sound like something distasteful. Several delegates chittered in what passed for laughter among their kinds. The holographic display shifted to show Earth, a blue marble spinning slowly in space. Then came the humans themselves. Bipedal creatures with soft skin, no natural weapons, and eyes positioned vulnerably at the front of their heads like prey animals. The Zephyrians had conducted their survey 3 standard years ago, and the results were, frankly, embarrassing. "Physical assessment," Krextar continued, pulling up detailed scans. "Average height 1.7 meters, weight 70 kilograms, no natural armor plating, no toxin glands, no energy projection capabilities. Their bones are made of calcium carbonate, a substance so fragile that our children use it for recreational braking exercises." Delegate Morpheus, whose crystalline body refracted the chamber's light into dancing rainbows, projected his thoughts directly into the translation matrix. "Their muscle density reads as approximately 1/3 that of a standard galactic citizen. How do they even support their own body weight?" "With great difficulty, apparently," Krextar replied, switching to footage of humans engaged in what their species called exercise. The assembled delegates watched in fascination as humans struggled to lift metal bars, ran short distances before becoming exhausted, and performed feats of strength that wouldn't challenge a Zephyrian infant. Observe their so-called athletes, their peak performers. A Zephyrian construction worker displays superior physical capabilities. Ambassador Veltar of the Insectoid Collective spoke next, her mandibles clicking in rhythm with her words. "What of their technology? Surely a species advanced enough for interstellar travel possesses weapons worthy of respect." The display shifted to show human military equipment. Projectile weapons that fired small metal pellets, explosives that required chemical ignition, vehicles that still used primitive combustion engines, the chamber filled with the alien equivalent of snickering. "Their most advanced warship," Krextar announced, highlighting a human destroyer, "carries weapons that would struggle to penetrate the personal armor of a Zephyrian foot soldier. Their fastest fighters move at speeds our cargo vessels consider insufficient for proper atmospheric entry." Elder Zephrek of the ancient homeworlds leaned forward in his massive throne, his 1,000 years of experience evident in every word. "Perhaps their mental capabilities compensate for these shortcomings?" "I was hoping you wouldn't ask," Krextar said, bringing up cognitive assessment data. "Their brains operate on electrical impulses generated by organic chemistry. No quantum processing, no parallel consciousness streams. They can only focus on one task at a time, and their memory banks require periodic unconscious maintenance they call sleep for 8 hours out of every 24. The laughter that erupted from the chamber was no longer polite. Even the usually stoic representatives of the machine collectives transmitted amusement signals through their communication arrays. "They have a saying," Krextar continued, clearly enjoying himself. "The pen is mightier than the sword." They literally believe that writing implements surpass military weapons in importance. Their greatest achievements include discovering that the universe is expanding, something our ancestors knew before we achieved interstellar travel, and splitting atomic particles to create explosions barely powerful enough to destroy a single city. Delegate Vorthak of the warrior clans, whose species had conquered 17 star systems through pure military might, stood up to his full 3-meter height. Surely this is some form of jest. No species this week could achieve spaceflight without external assistance. Who helped them? Which patron race uplifted these humans? That's the truly amusing part, Krextar said, his tone becoming even more condescending. No one. They did it themselves. It took them only 66 years from first achieving powered flight to landing on their own moon. They accomplished what most species require centuries to achieve, despite having no natural advantages whatsoever. Impossible, Vorthak declared. The statistical probability of such rapid advancement from a species with their limitations approaches 0. And yet here we are, Krextar said, spreading all 4 arms wide. These humans have submitted a formal petition for Galactic Council membership, including a request for defensive alliance privileges. They wish us to protect them from potential hostile species while they contribute nothing but their amusing presence. The display now showed human diplomatic messages, translated into the various galactic languages. Their requests were formal, polite, and almost heartbreakingly naive. They offered technological cooperation, cultural exchange, and something they called the human perspective in galactic affairs. Ambassador Melthar of the Aquatic Republics spoke through his water-filled communication sphere. What do their military leaders say about their capabilities? Surely they must understand their position relative to galactic standard forces. Their military structure is fragmented into hundreds of separate organizations based on geographical regions of their single planet, Krextar explained. They haven't fought a truly unified war in over 50 standard years. Most of their forces are trained for conflicts against other humans using their primitive technology. When we asked them about their strongest military unit, they provided information about something called the United States Marine Corps. The display showed images of human Marines in training. They crawled through mud, climbed over obstacles, and performed exercises that looked exhausting by their standards, but wouldn't challenge a Zephyrian child. Their equipment was laughably primitive: chemical-powered projectile weapons, fabric armor, and communication devices that required electromagnetic radiation to function. Their elite forces require mechanical vehicles to transport them faster than their natural running speed, Krextar continued. They communicate by making sounds with their breathing apparatus and depend on external tools for nearly every task. They can't even see in full darkness without artificial light sources. Representative Klexmore of the Hive Minds shared the collective thoughts of his species. We find their weakness almost offensive. How do they survive on their own planet with such limitations? What apex predators do they face? That's another entertaining aspect, Krextar said, bringing up Earth's wildlife. Their planet's most dangerous predators are actually quite small, creatures they call tigers that weigh only 200 kilograms. Bears that are barely 400 kilograms, sharks that spend their entire lives swimming in water because they can't survive on land, and these animals regularly kill humans. The chamber erupted in disbelief. A 400-kilogram predator was considered a minor inconvenience by galactic standards. Most spacefaring species had evolved from worlds where such creatures were prey animals. They tell stories about individual humans fighting single tigers and consider it legendary when the human survives, Krextar added. They've built their entire civilization around hiding from their own planet's wildlife rather than dominating it. Elder Zephrak's ancient voice filled the chamber. This is unprecedented. Never in the history of galactic civilization have we encountered a species so thoroughly unsuited for membership. Their petition should be denied immediately. Agreed, said Vorthak. Accepting such a weak species would lower the standards of the entire council. Other primitive races might begin to think they deserve representation. However, Ambassador Veltar interjected, their rapid technological development does suggest some form of hidden potential. Perhaps we should offer them protectorate status instead of full membership. They could serve as an amusing curiosity while we study their unusual development patterns. Absolutely not, Krextar declared firmly. Granting any form of official status to such a weak species would be seen as mockery by our enemies. Imagine if the Ravager clans discovered we had accepted beings who couldn't even defeat their own planet's small predators. We would become a laughingstock throughout the galaxy. The debate continued for another 2 hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The vote was unanimous among the major powers, with only a few minor species abstaining. Humanity's petition for Galactic Council membership was denied. More than denied, it was rejected with what could only be described as prejudice. The official response, transmitted to Earth's government, was brief and dismissive. The Galactic Council has reviewed your petition for membership. After careful consideration of your species' capabilities, we have determined that you do not meet the minimum standards for galactic civilization. We recommend focusing on internal planetary development for approximately 500 standard years before resubmitting your application. We wish you success in your future evolution. What the Galactic Council didn't include in their response was the real decision made in the closed sessions that followed. Humanity was to be classified as a protected curiosity, a species too weak to pose any threat but too interesting to ignore completely. A monitoring station would be established in their solar system, disguised as a research outpost, to observe their development and ensure no hostile species discovered their location. The logic was sound from the Council's perspective. Humans were so obviously harmless that protecting them required virtually no resources, and their rapid technological development made them worth studying. Perhaps in a few centuries they might develop into something resembling a proper galactic species. 3 days after the Council's decision, construction began on the monitoring station. A small crew of scientists and automated systems took up position at the edge of the Sol system, ready to observe humanity's continued development from a safe distance. None of them bothered to study human history in any detail. They had no interest in learning about human concepts like unconventional warfare, asymmetric tactics, or never giving up. They didn't investigate human sayings like, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." Most importantly, they never looked closely at the one piece of information that should have given them pause. In all their assessments of human military capabilities, they had focused on technology, physical strength, and conventional tactics. They had completely missed the most important factor in any military evaluation: the warrior spirit of the species being assessed. The Galactic Council had just made the biggest mistake in their 10,000-year history, but they wouldn't realize it until it was far too late to matter. The unexpected guest. 2 standard years after the Galactic Council's dismissive rejection of humanity's membership petition, the monitoring station at the edge of the Sol system had settled into a comfortable routine. The research team, consisting of 3 Zephyrian scientists and 2 Aquatic Republic observers, spent their time cataloging human technological development and cultural evolution from their hidden position behind Jupiter's largest moon. Dr. Velkoth, the station's chief researcher, was reviewing the latest data when his communication array lit up with an urgent priority signal. The frequency was one he'd never seen before, not human, not from any of the regular galactic shipping lanes, and definitely not from the Council. "Computer, identify signal source," he commanded in his native tongue. "Signal origin, unknown. Classification, hostile. Warning, multiple large vessels detected approaching system perimeter. Configuration matches Ravager clan assault formation." The words sent ice through Velkoth's circulatory system. The Ravager clans were the galaxy's most feared predators, a confederation of warrior species that had been expanding their territory for over 1,000 years. They took what they wanted and left nothing but empty worlds behind. No one had seen them in this sector for decades. "How many ships?" Velkoth asked, his voice barely steady. "Estimated fleet strength, 47 vessels. Class designation: heavy assault cruisers and planetary bombardment platforms. Estimated crew: 200,000 Ravager warriors. Velkoth's 4 hands flew over his console as he activated the emergency protocols. A message burst toward the nearest Council worlds, but even at faster-than-light communication speeds, it would take 6 standard days to reach civilization. By then, this entire system would be a debris field. The Ravagers weren't here for resources. The Sol system was too poor in useful materials to warrant their attention. They were here because someone had leaked information about humanity's weakness. Some species in the galaxy still paid tribute to the Ravager clans by providing them with information about easy targets. The humans would be perfect prey, a weak species with no defensive alliances and no way to fight back. Through his monitoring equipment, Velkoth watched as the Ravager fleet spread out in a classic predation formation. They would position themselves around Earth, demonstrate their overwhelming power, and then demand the complete surrender of the human species. Those deemed useful would be taken as slaves. The rest would be eliminated to prevent future resistance. The lead Ravager vessel, a massive dreadnought called the Bone Crusher, broadcast a message toward Earth in standard galactic languages. The translation matrix converted it to human languages and transmitted on all their communication frequencies. Attention, inferior species. This is War Chief Groktar of the Ravager clans. Your system now belongs to us. You have 1 solar rotation to surrender unconditionally or face complete destruction. Prepare your strongest warriors for honorable death and your population for servitude. Resistance is futile. Velkoth watched the human response with growing dread. Their governments went into emergency sessions. Their primitive military forces scrambled into defensive positions. Their news networks began broadcasting warnings about the alien invasion. But what could they possibly do? Their strongest weapons couldn't scratch Ravager armor, their fastest ships couldn't outrun Ravager scouts, and their entire species numbered less than 8 billion, a fraction of the force now surrounding their world. The Ravager fleet waited exactly 1 rotation of Earth around its axis. When no surrender came, Groktar gave the order to begin the demonstration. 3 Ravager cruisers moved into position around Earth's moon and fired a single coordinated barrage. The moon, which had orbited Earth for billions of years, cracked like an egg and broke apart in a shower of debris. The message was clear: surrender or watch your world die. That's when something unexpected happened. Instead of panic, instead of immediate surrender, the human response was transmitted on every frequency they could access. It came from a single location, a place their databases identified as the Pentagon, headquarters of the United States military. The message was brief and delivered by a human in military uniform. This is General Patricia Morrison, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Message received and understood. Earth does not surrender. We are coming. Groktar's laughter echoed through the communication arrays. Coming? In what? Your toys that cannot even reach escape velocity without chemical assistance? Your weapons that fire small metal pellets? This will be entertaining. But Dr. Velkoth noticed something that escaped the war chief's attention. The human military response wasn't random or panicked. All over Earth, transportation systems were moving with unusual coordination. Military bases were activating in patterns that suggested careful planning. Most surprisingly, space launch facilities around the globe began firing rockets into orbit at a rate far exceeding anything in their previous records. Within 6 hours, nearly 200 small human craft had reached Earth's orbit. They were clearly civilian vessels hastily modified for space use, shuttles, experimental craft, even some that appeared to be private spacecraft built by enthusiasts. None of them carried weapons capable of threatening a Ravager vessel. War Chief, one of Groktar's subordinates reported, the humans are launching some kind of fleet. Should we destroy them? No, Groktar replied with amusement. "Let them come. I want to see what their strongest warriors can do before we end this charade." The human fleet arranged itself into a loose formation and began moving toward the Ravager vessels. Their acceleration was pathetic by galactic standards, and their ships were clearly straining to maintain even basic life support in the vacuum of space. It would take them over an hour to reach effective weapons range, assuming their weapons could even function in space. Dr. Velkoth was monitoring both fleets when he noticed something that made his secondary heart skip a beat. The human vessels weren't heading for the Ravager fleet. They were heading for the debris field that had been Earth's moon. "What are they doing?" he whispered to himself, adjusting his sensors for a closer look. That's when he saw them. Moving through the wreckage of their shattered moon, human figures in primitive spacesuits were collecting something. Not mineral samples or salvageable technology, but specific pieces of debris, large pieces, roughly cylindrical, that they were loading into their small spacecraft with obvious difficulty. "Computer, analyze human activity in lunar debris field," Velkoth ordered. "Analysis complete. Humans are retrieving what appear to be large metallic cylinders from moon wreckage. Mass of individual objects, approximately 200 kilograms each. Purpose, unknown." Velkoth's mind raced. What could possibly be worth retrieving from their destroyed moon? What could possibly help them against the Ravager fleet? Then his analysis computer chimed with additional information. "Additional data. Spectral analysis indicates cylinders contain organic material in suspended animation. Life signs detected, but dormant." Organic material? In their moon? That made no sense. Earth's moon was a dead rock, always had been. Unless... "Computer, access human cultural database. Search for any references to organic material stored in lunar facilities." Search complete. Multiple references found to Project Sanctuary, a classified human military program initiated 50 years ago. Purpose: emergency preservation of Earth's apex predators in lunar cryogenic facilities. Stored specimens include Siberian tigers, African lions, Bengal tigers, polar bears, great white sharks, saltwater crocodiles, and others. Dr. Velkoth's 4 hearts stopped beating entirely. The humans hadn't just achieved spaceflight despite their limitations. They had been planning for something like this. They had taken their planet's most dangerous predators, the creatures that regularly hunted and killed humans, and stored them in hidden facilities on their moon, not as pets, not for preservation, as weapons. On his displays, Velkoth watched as the human spacecraft finished their grim harvest and began returning to Earth. But they weren't landing. They were heading for the largest Ravager vessel, the Bone Crusher itself. War Chief Groktar noticed the approach and opened a communication channel. "So, the weak humans have decided to mount a desperate attack after all. What do you carry in those pathetic vessels? Explosives? Chemical weapons? It matters not. Our shields will stop anything you can throw at us." The response came from a human vessel, audio only, transmitted by someone whose voice sounded remarkably calm for someone about to die. "This is Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. We're not carrying weapons, War Chief." "Then what do you think you can accomplish with your toys?" There was a pause, and when the human spoke again, there was something in her voice that made Velkoth's skin crawl. It was the sound of someone who had made peace with their own death and was looking forward to taking others with them. "We're not carrying weapons," she repeated. "We're carrying tigers." The tigers roar. War Chief Groktar stared at his communication display for several long seconds, certain that the translation matrix had malfunctioned. "Tigers? What are tigers?" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's voice came back over the channel, and this time there was definitely humor in it. Dark humor, the kind that soldiers develop when they're about to do something insane. Why don't you find out? The human fleet had arranged itself in a perfect attack formation around the Bone Crusher. Not perfect by galactic military standards, their approach vectors were clumsy, their spacing was inefficient, and their vessels were clearly not designed for combat, but perfect in a way that Groktar was about to understand. All ships, Rodriguez continued, her voice now transmitting to the entire Ravager fleet. Remember your training. These things killed our moon, they threatened our world, and they think we're weak. Time to show them what Earth's children can do. Begin Operation Tooth and Claw. The first human ship didn't fire weapons at the Bone Crusher. Instead, it rammed directly into the Dreadnought's main hangar bay, its hull cracking open like an egg against the Ravager ship's armor. The explosion was tiny by space combat standards, barely enough to scratch the massive vessel's shields. Groktar laughed. Suicide attacks? How primitive. Their sacrifice accomplishes nothing. That's when the screaming started. It began in the hangar bay where the human ship had crashed. Ravager warriors, each standing 3 meters tall and armed with weapons that could level buildings, began transmitting panic signals. Their disciplined military communications dissolved into chaos. Something's loose in Section 7. It's moving too fast to track. Where did it go? Where did it go? It killed Vraktor, tore his throat out. Groktar switched his main display to internal security feeds from the hangar bay. What he saw made no sense. The human vessel had broken apart on impact, releasing what appeared to be a single orange and black striped creature about 2 meters long. It was clearly biological, not mechanical. It was also clearly very, very angry. The creature moved like liquid death through his ship. Ravager warriors, elite troops who had conquered dozens of worlds, fled in terror as something they couldn't understand hunted them through their own vessel. It didn't use energy weapons or advanced technology. It used claws and teeth and an intimate knowledge of how to kill things. "What is that thing?" Groktar demanded over the comm. "That," came Rodriguez's voice, now openly amused, "is a Siberian tiger. About 200 kilograms of muscle, bone, and bad attitude. On Earth, they hunt things bigger than your warriors for fun." A second human ship rammed into the Bone Crusher's port docking bay. Then a third hit the starboard side. Each impact released another of the striped predators, and each tiger immediately began doing what tigers had evolved to do for millions of years: hunt anything that moved. The Ravager warriors were learning something that human hunters had known for centuries. It doesn't matter how big you are, how strong you are, or how advanced your weapons are. When a tiger decides your prey, your advantages become irrelevant. Tigers don't fight fair. They don't fight with honor. They fight to kill, and they're very, very good at it. "Sir," Groktar's tactical officer reported, "we're getting similar reports from the entire fleet. Human vessels are ramming our ships and releasing biological weapons. Casualties are mounting rapidly." Groktar switched his displays to show feeds from across his fleet. The pattern was the same on every ship. Human vessels would ram into Ravager dreadnoughts, breaking apart to release Earth's apex predators into the corridors and maintenance areas where the massive aliens couldn't use their heavy weapons effectively. On the Claw of Vengeance, a polar bear was methodically working its way through the crew quarters. Polar bears, as the humans could have told them, were not the cuddly creatures they appeared to be in ancient Earth videos. They were 400 kilograms of predatory efficiency, designed by evolution to hunt in the galaxy's most hostile environments. On the Blood Drinker, a great white shark was somehow moving through the ship's flooded sections, turning the Ravager's own aquatic crew areas into a hunting ground. The Aquatic Republic members of the Ravager Alliance were discovering why humans had spent thousands of years afraid of these creatures. But the tigers were the worst. Tigers were intelligent hunters. They learned their prey's patterns and adapted their tactics accordingly. After the first few kills, they stopped attacking Ravager warriors head-on and began using the ship's own architecture against them. They used ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and darkened sections to stage ambush attacks. They seemed to understand that their prey carried energy weapons and adjusted their approach accordingly. Most terrifyingly, they were coordinating. "How are they communicating?" Groktar demanded, watching as 3 tigers executed a perfect flanking maneuver against a squad of his elite guards. "They have no technology." "They don't need technology," Rodriguez replied. Her own ship was moving toward the bone crusher now, and Groktar could see through his sensors that it carried something different from the others, something larger. Tigers are social hunters when they need to be. They're also really good at learning from their mistakes. "What do you want?" Groktar finally asked. Around him, his ship was being systematically cleared of crew by creatures that shouldn't have posed any threat to a galactic military force. "What are your terms?" "Terms?" Rodriguez sounded genuinely surprised. "We don't have terms. You came to our system. You destroyed our moon. You threatened our world. This isn't a negotiation, War Chief. This is pest control." Rodriguez's ship completed its approach and rammed into the Bone Crusher's command section. The impact broke the human vessel apart just like all the others, but what emerged from the wreckage was different. It was definitely feline, but larger than the others, much larger. Nearly 4 meters from nose to tail, with muscles that rippled under orange and black striped fur. It moved with the same liquid grace as the smaller cats, but there was something else in its bearing: intelligence, purpose. "Computer," Groktar whispered. "Identify creature." "Species classification: Panthera tigris altaica. Common designation: Siberian tiger, alpha specimen. Note: genetic modifications detected. Enhanced size, enhanced muscle density, enhanced cognitive function." "You modified them?" "We improved them." Rodriguez's voice came through his speakers even as the creature stalked through his ship toward the command deck. "Turns out when you give tigers bigger brains and stronger bodies, they get really good at problem solving. Who knew?" Groktar reached for his sidearm, a plasma rifle capable of melting through starship armor. The tiger looked directly at him through the security camera and did something that made his 4 hearts stop. It smiled, not the expression of a dumb animal, but the calculated smile of a predator who understood exactly what it was hunting. Then it moved, faster than Groktar's enhanced reflexes could track, disappearing from the camera's view. "Where is it?" he shouted to his remaining crew. "Where is it?" The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the command deck in red light. In the crimson glow, shadows seemed to move with their own purpose. Groktar spun around, trying to track movement that might or might not be there. "You want to know the really funny part?" Rodriguez's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "We didn't even send our best predators. Wait until you meet what we keep in the deep ocean." Something moved in his peripheral vision. Groktar spun and fired, his plasma rifle discharging enough energy to destroy a building. The blast illuminated the command deck for a split second, revealing nothing but empty space. "The thing about tigers," Rodriguez continued, her voice now definitely coming from inside his ship, "is that they don't just kill you. They study you first. They learn your patterns. They figure out your weaknesses. Then they exploit them." Groktar heard a sound behind him and turned, firing again. This time, his weapon's flash revealed something that made him scream. The tiger was there, close enough to touch, but it wasn't attacking. It was watching, learning. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez reporting," came a new voice over the comm. Rodriguez was inside his ship, inside his command deck. "Bone Crusher is secure. Repeat, flagship is secure." "Impossible," Groktar gasped. "You're human. You can't survive in our atmosphere." "Marine Corps, War Chief," Rodriguez replied. And now he could see her. She was smaller than any of his warriors, wearing primitive armor and carrying weapons that couldn't penetrate Ravager personal shielding. She also had the tiger at her side like a trained companion. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome. Also, we brought breathing gear. Around the fleet, similar reports were coming in. Human Marines, working alongside Earth's apex predators, had systematically captured every Ravager vessel. Not destroyed, captured. The same species that the Galactic Council had dismissed as too weak for membership had just defeated the galaxy's most feared military force using primitive technology and creative thinking. How? Groktar asked. Rodriguez removed her helmet, revealing a face that looked far too young to be commanding this kind of operation. You made the same mistake everyone makes about humans. You focused on our weaknesses instead of our strengths. Yeah, we're physically weak compared to most galactic species. But we're also the only species crazy enough to make friends with our apex predators. She gestured to the tiger beside her, which was now purring like a house cat. Meet Khan. He's killed 17 of your warriors in the last hour, and he's just getting warmed up. The thing about humans is that we don't just survive on a world full of predators, we turn those predators into allies. Groktar looked around his command deck. His crew was gone. His ship was captured. His fleet was defeated, all by a species that couldn't even fight their own planet's wildlife. What now? He asked. Now? Rodriguez smiled, and for the first time, Groktar understood why tigers smiled before they killed. Now you get to explain to the Galactic Council how the weakest species in the galaxy just conquered the strongest. Should be an interesting conversation. 3 days later, Dr. Velkoth transmitted his final report to the Galactic Council. The monitoring station had recorded everything: the Ravager attack, the human response, and the aftermath. The 47 Ravager vessels were now under human control, crewed by Marines and their unusual companions. The humans had sent a new message to the Galactic Council. It was brief and to the point. Membership application resubmitted. References available upon request. Please respond promptly. This time there was no debate. The vote was unanimous. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity.